And can I please ask everybody to stand for our opening karakia? Te tawa mai I runga, te tawa mai I raro, te tawa mai I roto, te tawa mai I waho, kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haunere, huie, tae ki e. Much better than that. We have 3 apologies today from Councillors Brown, Taylor and Wright. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mawson and Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Do we have any conflicts of interest? There's no announcements by myself, announcements by management.
Tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora mea wise and anyone online. Just letting people know that we have been brought to my attention that there is an issue with the agenda online. So we're just retracting that and it'll be uploaded again really shortly. So apologies for any inconvenience to anybody who is using that today. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a little bit of housekeeping today. The hearing is being live streamed to Council's Facebook page and recorded. And just for our speakers who are with us already, you will have 10 minutes to present, and that includes some question time from councillors, and your presentation must relate to your written submission. So welcome to you, and thank you for being here with us today. And I'll invite John Zhang to come as our first submitter. Welcome. Morning.
Your Worship. Your Worship.
Oh, sorry.
Just if I may, just an addendum to make to the agenda. We have noticed that one of the previous proposals to reduce speeds is missing from this list, so we will suggest the addition of a C42, which will be Napier Hill, no change.
Thank you very much.
Tēnā koutou. Good morning, Your Worship, Mayor of Napier and the councillors. Hopefully you can hear me clearly. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present my the proposal, which is my concern about the limit in the Miani, especially the Willowbank Avenue, which is still remain 100k limit. So I will provide some of the rationales and my argument in terms of why this should be coming down to 80k. The overall, the whole report and of the proposed the bylaw change, I think that is a really good sign, and also the trend to try to reduce all our speed limits within our urban area. However, I just have some questions to ask why this particular road is not been lowered in terms of speed. And I believe it's an oversight in other than anything as an intention. So, let's see, try to do this. So after the not working. Even I think there's not linked with the.
Madam Mayor, could I just ask a question in the break?
Not linked.
This Willowbank Road, as is mentioned, isn't on the list of... No. And is this the oversight that was referred to earlier?
No.
No.
Napier Hill.
Oh, Napier Hill, so, okay, thank you.
That's right. Take no problem. We'll sort it.
Yeah.
We've stopped the clock. We've stopped the clock.
In the first one, I always say that.
Yeah. Just out of lockdown.
I can do it.
Your Worship, could we just check with our team how Willowbank is reflected in the list?
It's not in the list because there was no proposed change under our consultation.
One in here. Schools on.
Oh, here we are. Oh. Yep. Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah. A little bit technical click. Anyway, so after introduction, I will look at some of the details in terms of the key issues I have identified from reading through the review. The first, of course, is the safety, the safety to all the road users. The second thing is the quality of living environment. So along the Willowbank Ave, of those people living around the area, and the next ones we see the impact of the antisocial behaviors, such as the road burning or bull races, and the last, and also I will put a more discussion of the consistency of citywide policy. I mean, regarding the design and the policy of the speed limit before I draw the conclusion and summary. So about myself, and just before we start, so my name is John Jan, and I've been in Hawke's Bay for over 26 years, so since 1995. And I've been the ratepayer for Napier for 24 years. Before then, I paid rent, so I don't pay rent. So I paid rent for 24 years. And I live on the Willowbank Ave for over 16 years, so I know that area quite well. And that's why I think that the speed limit is still too high with 100K. So that's why my proposal is to lower the 100K limit to 80, if not lower. So I would prefer 70 or 75, but I think with the consistent issues, I think the 80 is acceptable. So the overall of that road along the Willowbank, and we can see that there's a 3.1, 3.2 long rural road, well sealed. It starts from the Geddes Avenue, and the other end go to Miani Road. Of course, there's some busy intersection there, and so one is the Riverbend, I think the Riverbend Road, the join the Miani Ave, and also another one's the Kinney Road. Along this road, we can see lots of activities, So start with Napier Boys High on the one end, and then we also have the Miani Village, which have the Miani School, the all other the commercial like the commercial veggie gardens and the market veggie gardens. Also along the residents, and we can see the more and more people living around as a lifestyle choice. The last thing, and I can see just around the Kinney Road and also the Tiawa area, the booming retirement and also the new houses around the area will have a great impact on this street, the speed limit. And we can see there will be more and more around this area. Another thing I observed is that during the years, that we see more people using the road to ride with the tourists. They go to the Miani with the wineries, and the other restaurants, the veggie shops. So there'll be more people using the bicycles along that area. And we see the new created the cycleway that along the regional council's the flood control drain. So there's many changes. I think there's many changes in terms of the booming area and the the number of residents, the more activities around the area. But one thing remain unchanged is the speed. So since I was there, 16 years ago, there was 100K, but now there's still 100K. Well, the other areas we can see is all lower to 80 or 70. Even along the Miani Road, some areas be 50. So I think that's the time of change. Just some really basic, we started some basic in terms of the people use the road, the shared road, and with multiple road users. So every morning during the school season, I see kids riding their bikes to school, especially to Napier Boys High. And also we see the tourists, as I mentioned before, they are riding bikes to go to the Bookwell Winery and other old church, and go to Napier Territorial area, and also we can people using it as a recreational and running training. Myself use it sometimes, but I try not to because of the traffic. But of course, there'll be the other, the key users, either the cars and the trucks, given the areas of the agriculture, horticulture activities, and some of the commercial use of the area. So we have the issues with the car accident. I believe more or less attributed to the speed. So those are the real images I have taken from the newspapers. So the bottom ones that happened not that long ago, I think in May this year, with the police pursued one car, it ended up in one of the paddock. On top, we can use this. So end up around this end of the Miani Road, and this is back in 2018. So that happens just not far from the corner of the Willowbank Avenue. And there's another one right at the corner of the Willowbank Road, and there's another one end up at the paddock close to the Miani roadside. So we see that's the more or less the attribute by the speed. But the question is, that's only 3.1 kilometer long road, how much time you can save, from driving 80K versus the 100K? I think the answer is quite simple. It's only 30 seconds. All the way you try to achieve is save your 30 seconds. But by saving that 30 seconds, what's the life or injuries or the fatalities that you can save? So by looking at this speed issues, we say the lower the speed, the safer the road. Of course, another thing we have observed in the past few years, because of and especially over the COVID, street getting quieter, and it attracted more antisocial behavior around the area, i.e. the car burning or bar races. So that's the two areas that I have looked at in terms of the road marks. And if someone were interested, they can go there, have a look at themselves. So that's on each end. So the last thing, and also I'm talking about the really general sense, without really the too detailed technical or engineering issues, is that the common sense is the study done by someone else. The higher the limit, the speed, the noisier the road or the environment. But also they will create a more carbon emission and air pollution to the area, and not mention the high speed will encourage more people use on the road with cars rather than ride bikes, where that we encourage people using bikes or walk more than just using vehicles. So those are some numbers that I have done a little bit of research on internet. The last thing I really want to draw attention, and especially this, we talk about the policies and also the bylaw change for this review. So I did a little bit of a number crunching myself, and this is nothing, as complex as the engineers, and also that's away from the engineer discussion, is look at the similarity of other roads around this area, and with other roads being load and limits, well, our Miani Avenue is not. So the methodology I use is I call property density. So compare the two roads. So one is the Tani Road along the, I think the Paramai and the Miani, the link that one. And that's the 2.3 kilometer long. The Willowbank is 3.2. And they both have a really similar environment there in terms of numbers of properties, in terms of the activities. But I think we have a more commercial activities than the Tannery Road, sorry. Then I worked out how many numbers of the properties along that road. So the density of the property along that road, they are pretty very similar. We can see that's very similar. So there will be 12.6 per property per kilometer, and versus 12.4. But the proposal in this area is 80K. Well, our Willowbank still remain 100. So we're going to ask a question: is it a fair that we still remain at a high speed zone? And also the other consistency issues is we look at the overall of this the bylaw, and the majority of them, or if not all of them, has been lowered, and that's only just a fraction of the the proposed that I pick up from the review, but there's more related to the area that are close to the Miani Ave. And you can see that all 80s, or even lower than 80s, well, the only one, the Miani F, been stand out, still remain 100. So again, I think that probably is something I would say is like an oversight rather than intention. So I think that's pretty much my argument why we should lower this area. So in summary, we see it to keep the consistency, we should lower the one to 80, if not lower. And so to improve the quality of our living environment, we should lower the speed. And to minimize the antisocial behaviors, but most importantly, we have to reduce speed to improve our safety to all our road users. And we don't want to save that 30 seconds. And well, we're going to be recreate ourselves in the future to our children or grandchildren, that because of the speed. And so that's why I recommend Napier City Council to consider to reduce speed at the Willowbank area from 100K to 80K. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'll just open up to councillors for any questions for John. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, John. That was an extremely well presented submission. Just a question from me. I'm not sure if do you have a neighbourhood support group or something out there? I was just interested in your neighbours' view, if you've had any of those discussions as well, and if those are a shared view.
Unfortunately not, because when I joined up this proposal, that was 2 years ago, and I was in a rush, and then suddenly I forgot. So, but then the other day I got the message saying, oh, actually we're going to start the review process, and then I think it will be a short time. I haven't really talked to the neighbour.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Councillor Bogue.
Oh, thank you. Madam Mayor, would you mind if I, because this item is not on our agenda at all, because it's not one of the areas we've considered, would it be possible for me to ask the officer just why it was omitted from the survey, if you wouldn't mind? Thanks.
Sorry about that delay. Through you, Madam Mayor. As John points out, it was left out by omission rather than a particular reason for keeping it as a high-speed corridor. There was no intention for that.
Just a further question, or perhaps asking you, Madam Mayor, because we haven't consulted on this, does this mean that we will not be able to make a decision on this piece of road in our meeting today?
That was a question that I was going to ask myself of governance and admin as to whether we can consider a decision on it. So we'll find out about that, and when we have our deliberations later on, we can discuss that further.
Thank you. Thank you.
Question for Tony.
Another question for you, Robin.
Sorry, Robin.
Acknowledging that it was omitted not with any intention in mind, if it had been included in the schedule of streets being considered, what would it had the same range of recommendations as all the streets around it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we've just checked on the Transport Agency's mega map system, and yeah, it would have an 80k recommendation.
Thank you.
I would just like to note that with development occurring at Tiawa and possibly on the other side of Willowbank Road as well, that urban environment, as that creeps out, that will involve speed limit changes as and when the infrastructure changes as well.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you very much, John, for your time today and your excellent submission.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite our second submitter, Brian Kalkanai. Sorry if I haven't pronounced that right. Excellent. Welcome, Brian. Yeah. And sorry, just to check with our governance team over there, are you doing the first ballot 5 minutes? Just so we've got some... Okay. If we have a ballot 5 minutes, just so the presenter can know that they're halfway through their time. Thank you. And then there'll be a second ballot 10 minutes. Thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be involved in this discussion. Some of the points that I want to bring up, you're probably quite familiar with yourselves, because Springfield Road, for one reason if none other, there's reasons where most people go down there and they probably know a lot of what, you will know what I'm going to say. Sue, my wife, and I have lived in Springfield Road for 38 years. So we know the place reasonably well. Our property is in Napier City, but as again you're aware that a little further up the road it becomes Hastings District. And within the last year there has been several reviews on the speed limit in this area, a lot of other ones as well. And again, you'll be aware that the speed limit has been 100, then it came down to 60, it went up to 70, it went back to 100, and I'd have to say that the people that live in that area were pretty well disappointed when it did go back up to 100. The first kilometre of Springfield Road is both undulating and winding, as you well know. And it means that the traffic, oncoming traffic, is very, very difficult to actually see what's coming the other way. as you be aware, the first part of the road, you're going up a hill, then you're down the other side, then you've got lots of curves, and it is quite difficult to see what's actually coming. And worse still, particularly when you're in the curvy bits, you've got cars going too fast to actually not cut the corners. I'm sure you've seen it yourself. They're not doing this, they're sort of going through. And if you're a car coming the other way, there's very little places that you can actually turn off the road to get out of the way, because on the sides there's either a fence with trees up it or a water drainage area, so you can't go off the road to get out of the way of someone coming the other way. And for us going up there several times a day, often on a bike, it's very, very difficult. Over the 20 years or more that we've been there, there's been many accidents in that first kilometre of the road. Fortunately, to my knowledge anyway, no one has been severely injured. There's certainly been people that had cuts and so, but that's about as far as it's gone. I'm aware of 4 accidents where the cars have really gone off the road. We get a lot that sort of go in and end up with one wheel down in the water drainage area or whatever, and they tend to block the road, and so you have to wait maybe a half an hour until something comes to tow the car out. So we're getting that a lot. But of the ones that I recall are ones that have come off the road. And the first 2 that I'd refer to were coming back into town, if that's the direction you want. They don't make the corner. They go straight over, through the fence, down a 5-metre bank and into my neighbour's property. There's been 2 in there, and there's been a big deal trying to tow the thing out. And so we've had 2 of those that I'm aware of, and we've had 2 the other way where cars have been coming from town going out, and same corner, but when they don't make it quite there, they go through our fence. So we've had our fence taken out a couple of times, one finishing end up on a tree, and fortunately they weren't hurt, but they certainly did a lot of damage. Sue and I and our neighbours, and one of my neighbours is going to speak with you fairly soon, and some of school children. I must say mine are long since here, but they ride along, and we also get, of course, a lot of just general public that are going for a bike ride. The problem we have is that there's no access for us other than at the bridge or way up the other end for us to get onto the trail that goes along the Tutakuru River. So we must be on the road, but when you've got cars doing this or going that, and we're trying to ride a bike, it's not a heck of a nice place to be riding a bike. Most of the residents saw the opportunity with the review last time, and as I said, we were a little bit sorry that we didn't do it. When the outcome was released that last time, it remained at 100 kilometres, and it seems strange to us where you've got a little bit up the road in Hastings, and they're taking all their 100s down to 80, and we're putting ours 60s up to 100. And some of the roads, as a comparison, we've got windy and hilly roads at 100, whereas Hastings have got flat roads, long straight ones, and they've knocked it down to 80. It doesn't seem logical. Well, for us, it does for them. We acknowledge when I say we, my wife and I, acknowledge Napier City Council and the way that you calculate or through the comprehensive procedure you have of coming with those speed limits. And generally speaking, you're talking about 50 kilometres per hour in urban areas and 100 in rural areas. And it's sort of a bit strange to me when you've got people coming out of town past EIT and you turn from 50 to 70. And then you go a little bit further and you go to 100. And the worst part of the road to me is got the highest speed limit. For me, 60 kilometres an hour is what I do. I've tried several times doing it 70, and it's doable, but it's those curves. I don't know how many times a day you drive down and actually see what is happening there, but the people, as I've said before, they're cutting the corners, cars coming the other way are getting pushed over. It's not safe. On the assumption that the current work being done on the Napier Taupo Road with things on Marine Parade, they're all having a look at, and I would imagine that they will, in one way or another, have a reduction in speed, and I think it would be nonsensical to not reduce the speed limit to Springfield Road. And as I said before, I would like 60. If you went to 70, I could accept that, but I would prefer 60. So that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brian. And yes, it is proposed to drop to 60. That's the speed that's been identified. So thank you very much for your submission. I will just see if councillors have any questions for you. Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your presentation, Brian. Just a query. Beyond the city limit into beyond the city limit into the Hastings district, what's the speed limit in the Hastings part of the road?
100.
100. Okay. Thank you.
It actually, if you think of Springfield Road, I tend to think of the first 2 kilometres because we're 107, which is 1 kilometre and 70 metres there, and then of course you go to the where you take all your rubbish for
The transfer station.
Yeah. But then of course Springfield Road goes right out to Itapu Road, and there's some pretty dangerous corners there as well. There's several of them, and so you've got 100 k's out there. I did restrict my presentation to the part that I was familiar with, those first couple of k's, but I think the whole way out. But then that's not yours, it's Hastings. But I would imagine they would be quite happy to drop it back a bit as well.
Did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. If I can, through you to the staff, just question what we do with roads that straddle the boundary. What is our discussion with the Hastings district around moderating or getting a common speed?
So through you, Madam Mayor, the Hastings have already reviewed their bylaw. We do work together and we consult each other prior to advertising these things. So all of our boundary roads, you'll now see, have common speed limits on both sides. The speed limit for Springfield Road has been reduced by Hastings through a bylaw review to 80k. what they've done is held off posting that until we've processed our bylaw. So there will be a change from 60 to 80 as you reach the boundary, assuming that this goes through today. And so that we originally proposed 80k, which is why they had the 80k on their side, but I think it's a far more open road, more straights and less risk if you come off the road. So 80 is a suitable speed for that section. So it will get posted after we post our new limit. So they've just held back.
I'm sorry. If I may, I think there's about 2, if not 3 parts of that part of the road where there's signs up for 35 k's to take corners. And so if you don't know the road and you've got someone coming along to a straight bit at 100 and then suddenly you've got that, even just slowing down to get around is putting yourself in. So,
Thank you very much for your time today,
Okay,
Brian.
thank
It's
you
much
very much.
appreciated.
Thanks, Brian.
And I'd like to invite Chris and Chrissy Marwick to present to us, please. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. We can.
Thank you. Good.
Good morning.
May I just start by adding on to Brian's presentation? I echo Brian's presentation completely, 100%. Just to inform you that that road that you mentioned just after the dump was reduced to 80 for a while, quite a while. And I disagree with Hastings, or disagree with the comments here about the road. Although it's straighter, there is a ditch both sides, there is no verge. So I would like to hope that Hastings would consider reducing that to 60 as well. I'm pleased to hear that you have changed your stretch of road where we live from 80 to 60, and that's part of my presentation. So I'd just like to start by introducing myself. My wife, Chrissy, and I, we and our 5 children, aged between 3 and 16. We lived there for about 6 years. We're actually completely opposite Brian there, so Brian's our neighbour. And we have noticed, even since we've been there, that the number of subdivisions, or lifestyle or life sentence properties, that some people refer them to, have got increased up that road. I do see in this document here that on page 12 and 13 that you have my submission, and if I may, I'd like to read that to you. So, Chrissy and I are very pleased that the speed limit on Springfield Road is under consideration to be dropped from 100 to 80, but we feel this needs to be dropped further for the following reasons. The number and types of vehicles along the road. This includes large rubbish trucks, cars with trailers, often with unsecure loads, heavy traffic vehicles, vineyard and orchard machinery and trucks, etc., especially the frequency of large vehicles and trucks. No verges in a lot of the places, with shrubs right up to the roadside. Lots of tight corners, some blind, with rises and falls in close proximity to each other. Narrow road with a number of driveways. The condition of the road itself, especially at the edges, with nowhere for pedestrians or bikes to pull over in many places, and uneven road surfaces for motorists. This road is used by a number of recreational cyclists, meaning road cyclists, so they can't go on the track. Especially on the weekends when the traffic frequency is higher as vehicles go to and from the transfer station. Rubbish flies off unsecure loads all the time because they secure it at home in their nice 50k limit, and then they come out to the dump and they floor it at 100k, or as fast as they can go with a trailer. By reducing the speed to 60k, this would reduce time and money spent picking up other people's rubbish. Because I've phoned numerous times, and I know Brian has, and other residents down that road have phoned the council asking to pick up rubbish, some quite dangerous. Rubbish is also a hazard for cyclists, as a lot of the rubbish is broken glass and large objects. The change in light shade along the road is dangerous, especially in winter, and some patches do not see the sun at all during the day and can be very slippery. When it rains heavy, there are regular slips and debris on the road. Even at 60 k's, vehicles would exceed the speed limit, but if it was set at 80, basically nothing would change. Because you and I all know, or I'm not admitting this, but when you see a speed limit, you might tend to do 5 or 10k, or try and do 5, 10k over the limit. I'm not saying that I do that.
Throw the book at him.
If the 70k speed limit at the end of Gloucester Street is being considered reducing to 50k, and that is wider, smoother and flatter than Springfield, then Springfield should be reduced to 60 at least, up to the transfer station and the Hastings District Council boundary. And if there are considerations considering making the entire length of Puketapu Road a 50k limit down from 100, then surely Springfield should be reduced to 60, being a much narrower and twisty, uneven road. And so that's the end of my presentation. I just wanted to add again that the presentation for Willowbank Road, if you're considering, or if that's being considered from 100 to 80, and that's a lot wider, straighter, with verges, then I would like to see Springfield reduced to 60. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'll open for any questions from councillors. You're off the hook, no questions. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Our next submitter is Guy Pankhurst. Welcome, Guy. And just for any new people that have come in the room, each presenter gets 10 minutes, and that includes question time for councillors. There'll be about 5 minutes to let you know you're halfway through your time. So welcome, Guy.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Madam Mayor and councillors. My submission was based on the 2018 consultation, and I had 2 points only. One was regarding the Napier Hill proposed change in speed limit. I was a little bit confused by the agenda myself because it seemed to be dropped off, and my first question was going to be, has that proposal been dropped off? But it was clarified earlier, so I won't dwell on that any more. Suffice to say that there have been some recent changes on Shakespeare and Milton Road that I'm not entirely happy with, but that's not the subject of this hearing, so I won't go there. My second point was regarding Awatoto Road. Now, the proposal there is to reduce it from 100 kilometres an hour to 80. And I had quite a good look at the consultation document, and I agree with reducing the speed on a lot of those roads. This was one where I just felt it wasn't necessary. It's just no need, no point. If I think back, probably as well, Prebenson Drive is another one in this category, but I didn't submit on that. Awatoto Road is an arterial road in the district plan hierarchy of roads. It's the reason for that is it's a connector between State Highway 2 and the expressway. It has few hazards, few corners, and not many entrances onto the road either. I couldn't really see in the officers report any substantive reason to reduce the speed. I also notice in the agenda document that the key stakeholder responses, it said that NZTA agreed with the proposal. That's actually not correct. NZTA opposed it, pretty much for the same reason as I do. I note also that the Automobile Association disagree with it for the same reasons. So really, that's the crux of my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy, for your submission. Now, can I just clarify through council officers with regards to that NZTA position, please? Just checking. While we check that, are there any further questions from councillors of Guy? Councillor Bogue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just curious, we have submissions from 2018 or 19 plus 2021. I'm not sure how, if the proposal that was sent out were identical, and have there been changes made in some of those roads in the interim?
There's been no changes made to the roads in the interim. There was a number of items which were included in the original consultation which needed to be put on hold because NZTA were reviewing their regulations. We have had the addition of 3 that weren't consulted on originally, that being the CBD reducing to 30, the variable speed limits around schools, and now my mind's just gone blank on what the third one was. If anyone can remind me of that. The Springfield actually reducing further from 80 to 60. So they were the 3 new ones, and the rest were all included in the original consultation. Councillor McGrath.
Through the chair, there seems to be a little bit of confusion here. I'm looking on page 116, and it states Awatoto Road, but the explanation talks about Sandy Road. So we haven't the only comment we've got from NZTA is agree. I'm not sure if they're agreeing with Sandy Road or Awatoto Road.
Okay.
So if we can just get that clarified at some stage today.
Council officers are on to that. Thank you, Councillor McGrath. There's no further questions. Thank you very much for your time today, Guy. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Guy.
Our next submitter has not arrived as yet, but we do have the Reverend David Day, and I would invite you up to give your presentation, please. Welcome, Reverend.
Morena. I have 6 points to raise quickly to you. First of all, the Napier Cbd. The limit of 40 seems to me to be a better speed. 30 is crawling, and we don't want crawling in the CBD. Outside the CBD, 50 is okay. All school approaches should be 40. Now, what's missing on all of these is insufficient signage. You don't sign what the speed limit is. You cannot expect people to kind of obey. It needs to be, especially outside schools. One of the things I do every week is I go along to St Pat's School and help reading recovery. And I see things happening on that road, speed-wise, and since then, something has happened to slow the traffic down. I'm going to come back to that later on, though. But the main thing is that speed limits have to be signed. If they're not signed, then they don't really exist. The introduction of, I come now to the Riverbank Road. The introduction of what I'll call mini humps are going from curb to curb. There are a mini hump one side and a mini hump the other. They're inconvenient for a start. They do slow traffic down, but I suspect that they cost actually more than a strip across the road. If you look at outside St Pat's, there is a raised portion for the children to cross over, and that works really well. About 50 metres down the road, there's a mini hump situation. Another 50 metres down, there's another lot. 50 metres down, there's another lot. Now, I consider that to be an overkill. Somebody's gone crazy on mini hump type stopping traffic. You don't need that many humps to slow traffic down. Outside the urban areas, the suggested reductions from 100 to 80 seems very sensible. Now, my final point is I live on George's Drive, State Highway 2, I think it is. It's a very busy road. There are no traffic slowdowns on that. It may be that it's because it's a state highway, I don't know, but on that road we've got Napier Boys High going one way earlier in the day and reversed later on. You've got intermediate, you've got primary school in the area as well. It's a rather like that happening on the is Ellison Street with the railway crossing. An accident waiting to happen. Kids don't always look where they're going, on bikes or on other kind of wheeled devices, or just running with their mates. I think that somewhere on George's Drive there needs to be a slowing device of some sort, or at least signage. So signage is my big point. It's missing. And if I see a sign, I notice it and I refer to it. If there's no sign there, I'm a free agent, almost. And that's what happens to what people do. They're free agents if there's not a sign. It must be signed. Signage. That's me.
Thank you very much, Reverend Day. If I could just call on council officers perhaps to speak to George's Drive and the ability to do anything in that environment.
Just work. There you go. Save me running around. So through you, Madam Mayor, the George's Drive is state highway and it is therefore under different control from the rest of the roads in the district. We are at the moment in the very initial stages of developing a regional speed management plan, and that's upcoming legislation is enabling that, and we will do that with the 5 road controlling authorities plus the regional council. So that will include the state highways. Now I do know that the agency are promoting a reduced speed on Marine Parade and through to Clive as well. So there are reviews happening. We don't get a great deal of say in how quickly they happen or which bits get reviewed when. But as for any calming devices or any speed reduction measures, we can certainly discuss those with the agency. But I would also recommend that you would go direct to them as well, because sometimes they get fed up of talking to us. But just a note with regard to the 40k outside schools, there is no legislation which we could enforce just with signage. We do have to change the speed limit.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Reverend Day? Councillor Price.
Thank you. I missed your point about railway lot crossing you
Yeah,
mentioned?
that's where the boy was hit by the train.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
that's the one you're talking about.
Boys do,
Yes,
usually boys,
it's tough
do
on
some silly
boys.
things. And that's going to happen on George's Drive.
Yeah, thank you. I just wasn't
will.
sure which crossing you were talking about. Thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, I'm a ward councillor for Onikawa Tamatea, which is the Riverbend Road and St Pat's School. I'm not sure if you're aware, you're talking about the road calming measures further down the road. Council put some road strips out to find out what the speed was down there, and it was noted that some of the cars were travelling at 130 k's between the hours of 3 and 4 when kids are actually out on their bikes. That's why it was moved further down the road as well. But I understand there are some changes that are going to be made there. So watch this space.
And just wondering, what's the advantage of what I call the mini hump alternative to a straight
That's
hump?
probably...
We'll ask council officers to give you some feedback on that.
I could answer it.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The advantage of those are the trucks and buses can travel over them without slowing down as much. They tend not to speed. The people we're targeting with the cushions, speed cushions, are the cars. They're the ones that tend to speed.
Thank you very much for your time, Reverend Day. And I'd now like to invite Robin Gwynn, please, to come and present to us.
Councillor Price is thrilled at the education he's receiving on speed cushions.
Totally agree.
Welcome, Robin. You know the drill well.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors.
Good morning.
I wrote my submission on this subject 2.5 years ago now, so it was quite difficult thinking myself back into the different age of 2019 before deciding on whether to bother you by turning up. But there were aspects of council's process, in particular, in dealing with the whole question that I thought did deserve comment, so here I am, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Local transport movements and speeds are relevant to the lives of most of us residents, and more could have been done, and I think should have been done, to talk to us before suggestions were made in the first place. Napier has a network of neighbourhood watch areas. There are at least 3 in my part of the hill, for instance. It's a pity that there were neither any ward meetings about the proposed changes, nor any attempt to involve the neighbourhood watch groups in discussion of what might be sensible. Surely, if we're going to be looking at local speed limits, these are things that should happen. They didn't. And when Council's suggestions first appeared in 2019, my memory of reading them was that there was plenty of we think, that is, Council thinks or its officers think, but not always much evidence provided to support what was proposed. You'll see from my written submission that I therefore directed some specific questions about one matter to the relevant officer. Since I never heard back, I'm none the wiser today, and I won't be speaking about that issue. In my own thinking and in my submission, I tried to make and draw a clear distinction between neighbourhood streets, I was thinking particularly of the Hill because that's where I live, and more significant roads connecting them to the wider Napier scene and beyond. I live in Clyde Road, that's near Girls High School, for example, and that is clearly a neighbourhood street. It was suggested the speed limit be reduced to 40. That made sense. But on leaving it, unless one's heading into the city centre, it's important that Shakespeare Road and its connection with Battery Road have more flowing traffic. And I recommended that the speed limit there should stay at 50. To check that was reasonable, I conducted my own experiment, which continued after my submission had actually been sent in. After I'd driven it over 30 times, with my car's speed governor set to 50, so I suppose I was travelling at 46 or 47, just once in those 30 occasions had I had any occasion to brake. I argued there seemed no good reason why a blanket 40 should be set for that road, which is not as narrow or full of sharp bends as other parts of the hill and is not impacted by side roads coming into it. Well, 2 years have passed, and I heard the Mayor say there had been no changes in the interim, but there have. Council's already made its own determination without taking into account or answering the arguments I advanced. So I don't feel that my time and effort spent on my submission were at all worthwhile. Council has acted through putting in place a whole series of what has just been called mini bumps. Well, it's probably a good description, so we'll use them. And so there's a whole series of these shorter speed bumps, no fewer than half a dozen of them within little more than half a kilometre. I agree with the speaker who said this seemed overkill. The sudden appearance of these new bumps now provides me with added reason to believe I was right that feeder roads like Shakespeare Road need a different approach. For us in Clyde Road, it's the obvious, sensible route if we're heading for the pool on Marine Parade, say, or Ahuriri, or the Reserve, or Taradale, or the East Coast. Now, my wife happens to suffer from an arthritic hip. There are now in place half a dozen bumps which are bound to and do cause her pain, physical pain, whenever we pass over them. I find it doesn't matter if I come to a complete stop, or if I take it at 5 kph, or what I do, I can't stop the pain. And I hear her indrawn breath, which says that she is being caused pain. So this is a health matter, actually, as well as a speed matter. I think that the feeder roads need to be free of those kinds of obstructions. And I hope you will take this into account, whether or not you think it's simply a speed matter. Obviously, they were imposed for a speed reason. And I also think, for the reasons that I specified in my original statement, that it would be more helpful if cars can travel on Shakespeare Road at 45 to 50 than at 40 or something less. And I'm very happy to answer questions on any of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. And you may be aware, but just with regards to the speed bumps on Shakespeare Road, that is with regards to a Safer Schools initiative that's been funded by Waka Kotahi, and it is a 12-month trial at this stage, but certainly the focus and objectives of that is around providing safer pathways and cycling and walking for the girls going through to Napier Girls High School and Sacred Heart. That was the driver behind putting those in, as opposed to it being specifically to reduce speed. But obviously, it's reducing speed so that they can walk and cycle on the road in a safer manner.
Yes, and I mean, obviously safety has an appeal. One wants roading to be safe. You can't argue against this. But the logic, if you take it to its extreme, is you say, right, no cars. In that case, there's no problem. It's very safe, but you can't go anywhere. There has to be a balance in this. And part of my original submission was about Prebenston Road. Now, Prebenston Road was then said in the council documents to be potentially dangerous, and I simply couldn't see that for most of Prebenston Road getting to Taradale from Napier, and I was aware as a past councillor that that road had enabled more, I think, commerce, certainly made it better for people in Taradale to get to Napier and from Napier to get to Taradale. So there were positive advantages, which hadn't been considered, apparently. And I think this is an ongoing balance which needs to be, one needs to keep looking at. But certainly, having experienced what my wife has experienced, I think that the health issue needs to be considered a lot more than it has. I very much doubt that whoever put those bumps in has driven with an arthritic passenger in her condition. And what alternative road do we want? And that council hasn't put out a map showing where all of these are so we can avoid the whole lot of them. I don't know where they are.
Thank you. And I will just confirm with council officers, will we be seeking feedback on the Safer Schools initiative after the 12-month period? So there will be an opportunity to actually provide feedback specifically to that.
Good.
Are there any questions from councillors? Thank you very much for your time, Robin. And I'd now like to invite Anna Madureis on behalf of Port Ahuriri School to present, please.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Anna Madureis Smith tōku ingoa, and I'm speaking today in my capacity as the presiding member for the Port Ahuriri School Board of Trustees. As per our submission, we support the decision to reduce the speed limits in school zones from 50 to 30 kilometres an hour, and this position is based on the increased chances of survival if struck by a vehicle. We do, however, seek that the school zone, and therefore the speed limit, is actually extended around Port Ahuriri School to include Battery Road between 150 and 160 Battery Road. At the moment, the proposed school zone is only for Lever Street area. We actually have two entrances to the school, this main one here, and also this entrance down here. And the majority of our school catchment actually extends up along Hospital Hill area here, and of course this side of Battery Road. So safe crossing for our children from Battery Road and the northern side of Hospital Hill is very important to us. Our concern about this section of road has been well recorded with Napier City Council, with personal frequent contact over the past 6 to 7 years. And it's been very much appreciated that within that time we have actually now got speed cushions further down the road here, which I personally believe have made a difference, as well as a barriered crossing at this point here. One of the biggest concerns that we still have is that this dip in the road here, the visibility around this intersection here is incredibly difficult, particularly for parents with young children, toddlers, prams, etc., to get into the school. This marking of the road here would actually require you to reduce in speed. However, the majority of people tend to cut through the median barriers here, which means they no longer have to reduce their speed. We believe that this would be solved by a traffic calming measure such as a garden, raised concrete garden barrier in this part here, which means traffic would be forced to slow down. And I note Councillor McGrath earlier spoke about the recorded speeds around St Patrick's School. Similar studies were undertaken on Battery Road, and I think the highest speed was 119 kilometres an hour at 9 o'clock in the morning. So that is very concerning. So we therefore seek that the variable speed limit is increased to include the section of Battery Road, that it's applied 20 minutes either side of the school start and finish times, and that there be additional traffic calming measures applied to Battery and Lever Streets to ensure that traffic is slowed. I'd also note that the barriered care crossing here already has a massive dent in it from being hit by a vehicle, as well as vehicles having taken out the sub-power station here as well. So thank you for your time and open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Anna. I just have a question for council officers as to whether there is any ability to increase the size of the area that's covered by a variable speed limit by schools, or is that actually dictated to us by NZTA?
No, we would have to request an amendment, but yeah, we can certainly make that request.
Thank you. Councillor Crystal.
Just with your crossing, so the one on Battery Road, where they've got a new, do you have a patrol crossing there after school? Is it?
No, there's only one care crossing at the school, which is up here.
Yeah.
But as you can see, this is basically an island. So although it helps children get to parents' vehicles, etc., actually walking to and from school, making the city livable and being able to send children to school on their own. I, for example, just live up Goldsmith Road, and I would be very hesitant to send my child on their own to cross that road because it's a difficult road to cross. You have cars coming from here, cars turning out there, and there, and cars coming from up here.
Thank you.
Councillor Bogan.
Thank you, Anna. Do you have many children who ride bikes, and if so, does this current configuration affect their safety?
Because it's a primary school, we do have a lot of children bringing their bikes to school. They're normally accompanied by an adult, but certainly any kind of ability to cross safely, and as I said, those speed cushions on Battery Road, I personally feel have done quite a lot to slow traffic, but and the care crossing up here, but anything that would help children be able to safely cross the road, even with their parents, because of course as a parent, if you've got a child on a bike as well, trying to navigate traffic at the same time is problematic.
If there's no further questions, thank you very much for your time today, Anna. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, we are running a little bit ahead of schedule, but I understand that Greg Hinton is here to present to us. Welcome, Greg.
Good morning, mayors and councillors. My name is Greg Hinton. I live on the corner of Bledisloe Road and Riverbend Road in Maranui. I've lived there for about almost 20 years now. I must confess, when I got up this morning, I actually started to have misgivings about coming along today and wondered the value of attending this meeting. While I was pondering the thought, it soon got pointed out to me with the car doing another burn-off on the corner of our street that it was necessary to come and speak today. My submission was all really about the whole process of trying to lower the speed limits. I don't see a lot of value in this at all. Okay. Is speed really the issue? Is the 20k band between 100k and 80k the problem? Or is it the bit between 30k and 50k the problem? Or is it really the fact that we're not able to enforce the existing speed limits that we have and the cars are travelling at 20 plus k's above the speed limit? I must admit I was a bit shocked with the councillor informing us before the cars were doing 120k along Riverbend Road during school hours. Okay. Is it going to make any difference dropping the speed limit to 30 k's if someone's doing 120? I suggest the answer is a big no. I'm strongly opposed to the creation of laws where there is an obvious inability to enforce or penalise those who break the existing laws. It just doesn't make sense to keep creating laws that we can't actually work with. Before instigating any new speed limits, does the council have an unequivocal undertaking from the New Zealand Police that they'll commit the manpower and the resources needed to enforce the lowered speed limits? And secondly, and just as critically, is there a similar undertaking from the New Zealand Judicial Service that they will actively apply and enforce penalties arising from the contravention of any new laws? I asked this as recently I was talking to a police officer who commented to me that they don't even bother processing suspects that they catch with outstanding fines of less than $13,000, as it isn't worth the paperwork to take them to court when the system doesn't back them up. That officer wasn't from the Eastern District, I will tell you, but I assume a similar set of protocols probably exist here. I don't raise these questions flippantly, but rather as a concerned witness to existing speed limits being blatantly flouted. As I say, I live on the corner of Riverbend and Bledisloe Road. Some 200 metres up the road, we have a transition zone from 70k to 50k an hour. I routinely see cars coming down there doing in excess of 80k an hour, some 240 metres into the 50k zone. Without the ability to enforce it, dropping that down to 30k's or whatever is not going to do anything. And it works in the other direction. I see cars going out who start accelerating at the corner of Riverbend and Bledisloe, and that's about 200 metres before the actual change in speed limit. So by the time they get there, they're already doing 90k an hour in a 70k zone. Therefore, until we have the ability to achieve a more universal adherence to existing laws, I would ask that the Council please refrain from dropping any speed limits until we have some ability to help enforce the existing laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, and I do appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us today. It is part of the process, and it's vital that we hear people's opinions and their feedback. And I think everyone in the room today would acknowledge that enforcement is a vital part of actually controlling the speed that residents are travelling in our streets. Yep. So no one is in argument with you about that, and it's an ongoing challenge, I guess, with trying to resource to the levels required to ensure that the enforcement can be undertaken.
I have concerns, like I wasn't going to talk about the speed bumps on Riverbend Road. I didn't think it was actually part of the process today, but I'd like to reiterate that I see that as total overkill. And I wonder what the motivation is to try and force people to 20 kilometres an hour when you're trying to enforce a 50k speed limit. Because that's what those bumps are about. They're forcing people down to 20k or less in a 50k zone. It seems detrimental to the object of actually getting people to obey the speed limit. I travel up and down Riverbend frequently, as you can imagine, and all I see now is people slowing to 20k an hour, then booting it back to 50k, slowing down to 20, booting it back to 50. What is the point? It makes for very ineffective traffic flow and probably more dangerous driving behaviour. Thank you.
Councillor Bogue.
Thank you for that. At the end, at the Bledisloe Road end, where it meets Riverbend Road, as you know, there have been some concrete installations put in place, and I just wondered, as you live nearby, have they made a difference in terms of traffic behaviour in your perception?
I approached the council to get those stuck in however many years ago it was. To my dismay, the barrier was actually stopped some probably 6 metres back from the actual intersection. I understand it was to allow for truck flow around the corner. Effectively, it left too open an area for wheelies to be carried out, so the council then tried various surface modifications, which was just a great challenge to the local speedsters to prove that they didn't work and were unable to stop them. So within a matter of days of that high friction surface going in, it was covered in black burnout marks. My dismay is also living and working on the section that we have on the corner there. I've witnessed cars go around the wrong side of the traffic island as they're turning off Riverbend into Bledisloe Road, which means that they're probably something about 70 metres on the wrong side of the road before they can get back to their side of the street. Considering that we have Richmond School literally beside us, kids coming out of there. Around the corner on Riverbend Road, we have Puki Moki Moki Marae, we have the Assembly of God Church, we've got a preschool next door to us. It's just a recipe for disaster. But I don't believe the speed limit drops are going to work. We have to have some ability to enforce what we already have.
There's no further questions. Thank you very much, Greg, for your time today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Then it's, I'll just check in with councillors because we do have a submitter here and we're due to stop at 10:30 in 10 minutes' time for morning tea. If you are happy to do that.
Get on with it.
Yep.
I'll just run off.
Yeah. Anyone that does need to duck off quickly can do that. So we will have the next submitter, which is David Murray, and he is presenting on behalf of the Automobile Association. So welcome, David. I'll invite you to come up the front. Thank you. And then we'll just wait for the councillors to return.
Good holding, man.
And David, just so you know, you have 10 minutes for your presentation today, including questions from councillors. There'll be a ballot 5 minutes, so you know that you're halfway through.
I think I only got about 4 required. So
Oh, well, there you go. The councillors could have held on a little bit longer. Okay, ready whenever you are, David.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me this morning. I managed to draw the short straw. So, my role with the Hawke's Bay District of the Automobile Association is Vice Chair at the moment. We represent the mobility issues for over 65,000 members in the districts. The local membership elects a council of 10 members annually to advocate on their behalf. Thank you. This is a voluntary role, and councillors are chosen with skill sets in mind. We currently have 2 roading engineers, one with a lifetime of experience in traffic safety, setting of speed limits, policy development, legislation enforcement, and the other having been involved with most local projects of significance for the last 40 plus years. We have 2 councillors with road traffic policing as a background, and there are also 5 avid cyclists in our mix. Our submission has been provided with the assistance of their collective expertise. And when it comes to question times, forgive me because I'm not necessarily an expert in this area. On the 2nd of July 2016, NZTA Waka Kotahi released a completely revised speed management guide for RCAs to use when reviewing speed limits along with megamaps. Speed management guide requires sound information and evidence to justify the proposed changes. The Napier City Council do not appear to have been very forthcoming with adequate evidence or information to support the proposed changes. Without sound evidence, it will have been difficult for the public to provide good feedback or make informed submissions to Council. The outcome of Speed Management Guide is to ensure there is national consistency in the application of speed limits and they meet road user expectations. It's therefore important that there is consistency within the city and the roads that cross the boundaries into Hastings District. Speed management should be targeted where there is greatest potential to reduce death and serious injuries. The Speed Management Guide instructs that only the top 10% of roads with a high crash risk should be considered. It is our understanding that only 2 roads in this review actually meet NZTA Waka Kotahi's criteria, and that is Brookfields and Sandy Roads. However, you will see from our submission that 8 proposals are supported, the rest not so much. The transport system should move people and goods not only safely but efficiently. Many of the proposed changes do not meet both these objectives. From our councillors' engineering experience, speed limits must be credible, matching the look and feel of the road environment. Otherwise, road users will simply not observe or comply with them.
everyday blatant disregard for traffic regulations can be witnessed, primarily driven by the perceived lack of consequence. Speed enforcement on most of the roads where speed limit reductions are proposed is highly unlikely. Police do not currently have the resources to carry out enforcement on roads where crash history and risk is historically low. Engineering improvements to roads is proven to be a much more effective way of achieving outcomes rather than simply reducing a speed limit. In our submission, we have provided detailed commentary on each and every proposed change in the hope that it will be useful to Napier City Council and that a sensible and logical decision will result. I'd just like to thank the Council for the opportunity again for making this submission.
Thank you, David, very much. And obviously councillors have read your detailed submission. I'll just open up for any questions. Councillor McGrath.
It's through the chair. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Just wondering, the report was signed off by somebody else, not yourself.
Yes.
When the report was done, was it a desktop analysis of the roads, or did the team go out and look at each road?
My understanding, because they're avid cyclists, they went out on their bikes and had a look at every road individually. As I said before, that most of the guys that were heavily involved in the submissions were very familiar with each and every road. So having had, because the one that I refer to the most was ex-NZTA, so he has a good understanding of what is required.
Yeah, because like you said, there'd been some new rules come into force, and I noticed that a lot of when we go off to our stakeholders and people that we think know a lot about our roads, which is the AA and NZTA, there was a lot of variances between the two answers. Any idea or reason why that might be from your point of view?
Sorry, when you say variances between the answers, between who?
Between NZTA and the AA. I think Miani Road's an example. I think AA said 80 k's is great, NZTA preferred 60.
Right.
That's quite a big change between two expert groups.
Okay, yep. The feel of that particular road suggests that it is more than 70. And yeah, I think, to be fair, that whilst NZTA personnel has changed, and is possibly the reason for the difference, but it was considered, and as I said in the presentation, that this is a joint submission with the comments from not only the guy that's involved with traffic, but also the policing guys as well. So it was just felt that at this point in time, that 80 would be more appropriate, but you'll see we also supported the reduction to 50 further down the road. So
yes,
yeah. So I think the other point that we make too is that some of these roads are very significant arterial routes, and that's where you need to also consider the movement of freight as well. And every minute in the freight industry is very important, as you probably had submissions from the freight industry. The other thing that's quite important too is some of the arterial routes have got very little in the way of merging traffic or traffic coming from side roads and things like that. They were planned that way.
Yeah.
That kind of help?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Bring under the bus.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, not so much a question, but more a thanks. In both submissions, both the previous and the current submission, your comprehensive approach is appreciated, and the time and effort of your submitters, and of course all the other submitters that are submitting, but particularly the way you've particularly articulated your concerns or your point of view, I think is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as I've said originally too, is that we are charged with representing the road user and the motorist and the cyclist and thing as well, so we have to take that in consideration too. So thank you for your comments.
There's no further questions then. Thank you very much, David, for your time today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Thank you. And we will now break for a short break. Be back at 11:15. everybody to our speed limit bylaw hearings. And we now have our next group of submitters here, and I would like to invite Jeremy Dunningham, please, up to the front to present to us. Welcome, Jeremy.
Do I need to do anything with this?
If you pull it nice and close, yes, otherwise it doesn't.
Is that picking me up?
Perfect.
Great. Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Greetings, Madam Chair, councillors, council staff. Before I start, I would like to point out that it's Mental Health Week this week, and I do have a disability in that regard, so if I get lost or start stuttering or stammering, you'll understand. I'm sure you'll forgive me. In this oral submission, I don't intend to parrot what I've already submitted in writing, but there are some points that I would like to clarify as I wrote it a couple of years ago, and events have overtaken some of my material. I also realised that I'd forgotten to mention in my preamble that for 2 long and hard years, while I was studying my wine science degree down here by correspondence, I worked for Auckland City Council as a parking officer, and it was a nightmare. One of the biggest nightmares that I remember was working around schools. I always had a dread that some child or parent was going to get harmed in the mayhem that was around the place, and it sticks in my memory, and that's probably why I'm so vociferous about safety around schools in my submission. I also remember that despite having had 20 years in the Justice Department, working with some of New Zealand's most hardened offenders and in the criminal justice system, I'd never experienced abuse like I got from well-dressed mothers in their Range Rovers and Jaguars outside private schools who had parked on the grass and the footpath, telling me that I was a nasty little fascist and to go away, and my husband would pay any fine you care to give me. So that was quite an experience. The 2 events which are having the most influence on us now, obviously, are COVID-19, which is a big enough challenge for the world, but still dwarfed by our greatest threat, climate change. The relevance of both to the issues under discussion today are as follows. 1, COVID-19 has changed the way we travel, in that many now choose to use personal transport for obvious reasons over public transport. This may or may not be temporary, but I suspect it will last some time as we struggle to deal with the virus. What this means is more individual vehicles on the roads, growing popularity of e-bikes and people commuting on them, mopeds and low-powered 2-wheel scooters, all increasing in numbers. This in turn means more congestion, more vulnerable road users. And unless and until we can build some more allowance into our roading, cycling and walking networks, this really means that reducing traffic speed in important areas is more vital than ever. 2, we'd like to forget about it, but climate change is upon us, and it's quite clear that more devastating randomised events will wreak havoc in our communities, and we know that too well. You might say, what can little Napier do in regard to the huge economies which are contributing to most of the global warming scenario? But in that regard, I would remind everybody that Napier is particularly at risk with its large coastlines and much of the land and property below sea level. I can also say that New Zealand's just received a smack over the knuckles from the international community for not pulling its weight. So any little bit we can do, we should. Lower traffic speeds equal less emissions. Now moving to the general part of my submissions, and I apologise for the bullet points all reading 10. I don't know what happened there. That was one of those weird things. I mentioned in my submission that road safety should be weighted towards the average driver and other road users. In other words, users will range from the highly experienced and aware right down to the new and inexperienced. Road safety mitigation should aim to reach a kind of mid-range of users, and lower speeds in designated areas allows for that. On that matter, I would like to commend the Council for the many traffic calming interventions popping up around the city. We've noticed the difference it makes, both walking, cycling and driving. If you would mind counting down to bullet point 7, so I'm afraid you'll have to do it on your fingers or something because of all my 10s. I will expand briefly on this by factoring in the issue of cost. Lower traffic speeds means cost savings from a smoother flow of traffic, less accidents, and when they do occur, less damage to vehicles and less harm to users, let alone
less call-outs for the emergency services. And while I'm on the subject of costs, lower speeds will reduce fuel and wear and tear costs enough, I suggest, to counterbalance the costs of the small amounts of time lost in travelling a bit slower in the designated areas. I do bring up Ahuriri. I know it's not part of the current areas under discussion, but I think it needs looking at in future. We all know it's changing. This once quiet seaside village is now becoming attractive as living accommodation, office space and hospitality, and of course tourism. At the same time, the volume of through traffic to the port has increased, with a consequent rise in noise, air and dust pollution, and safety concerns for the many cyclists and walkers who now enjoy the area. So I strongly suggest that relevant streets in this precinct be considered for the future for traffic calming and slowing for the above reasons, and also because the roads are wearing out pretty fast there. Lastly, in summary, I understand the majority of submissions don't support the Council's plan. I understand that it seems easier to maintain the status quo, but we run the risk of being left behind as other cities do make such changes in New Zealand and overseas. Person-friendly cities are becoming more and more the way of the future. Cities are not just for commerce, but it is an important aspect, and the more people, the better the commerce. Change is always alarming, and in the initial stage confusing, but as we have seen in the past when changes have been made both locally and nationally, dire predictions of disaster and shambles rarely come to pass. I would strongly encourage the Council to proceed with the changes, and to alleviate the concerns of those opposed, it would be worthwhile monitoring and reviewing the effects of the changes over a period of 12 months, and I'm sure you've got that organised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. I'll just open up for any questions from councillors. Thank you very much for the time you took to both prepare your written submission and coming to speak to us today, Jeremy. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Very good point on COVID too.
I'd like to invite Duncan Darroch on behalf of Taradale High School, please. And just noting that Tom Little and Libby Harding, two students from Taradale High School, are unable to join us today. They're frantically studying for their exams, so they've put their apologies in.
Yeah. Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Your Worship the Mayor and councillors, and good to see some familiar faces from our last foray here, where our students presented to you for the 10-year plan. And we're very excited and pleased to have watched the video afterwards, to have seen your recommendations were passed with regards to the speed limit, the road safety measures in the 10-year plan. So thank you for your work in that regard. I'd like to speak on behalf of the principal, who's given me his thoughts, on behalf of some students who have communicated as well, with regards to your proposal for reducing the speed limit outside Taradale High School, Taradale Intermediate School, and on Miani Road as well, that specifically. I've got 4 key points that I'll speak to. Number 1, giving you the context for those watching or who are unaware of the context of environment. Number 2, our students' modes of transport. Number 3, the environment. And number 4, an anomaly that I'd like you to fix through amendment or other methods to ensure a complete safety across Murphy Road. So, firstly, the context for those unaware, there are over 2,000 young people who use this stretch of road. It's only 1 to 1.5 kilometres long, and it has a huge volume of very vulnerable road users. From Riversdale Kindergarten, who has walking school buses, all the way up to our high school. Also, Fairhaven School, a special needs school attached to Blenhersloe Primary School. So when we look at this particular context, you have some of the most highly concentrated roading network in the city at any one particular point with regards to vulnerable users. Our current mode of transport, I'll just speak to the 3rd point here, the reduced prefrontal cortex of teenagers. Those who have experience working with young people will know that risk-taking is part of growing up, and through reducing speed limits across the whole of Murphy Road, you essentially help to mitigate their worst impulses. In regards to the digital life they lead, the phone is essentially attached to their body, and future technologies may evolve to implant it into their body. Who knows? I can't see the future. But the distractions are very real, and the consequences are very, life-changing for a young person who makes a bad choice with regards to distraction. Our current modes of transport. Sorry, go back one slide. We have a large number that use active transport to get to school. We have a bike shed with 100 bikes, and often it's overflowing with several dozen more than can fit, so up to 150 bikes. We have scooter racks and skateboard racks that can fit 70 skateboards and scooters, and those are often full as well. The majority of our school are pedestrian, either to a car or all the way home. We've just reached a point at our school we're having to bring a zone in because we have over enrolment, so that will actually narrow down the range of students that will access our school, so that the majority will be within 1 to 3 to 5 Ks of the school. So it's within a zone where we could see 80 to 90% in an active sort of mode, or where the others from the Napier Cbd Road may obviously have to come in via vehicle. The risks, as presented in the last submission, were obvious, and as a council look to reduce those risks, this will become less important. But there are no crossings, there's no road markings, we have car doors opening, and so those will be addressed as the council improves the traffic safety in that space. Speaking to the proposal, the variable speed limit zones we fully support. They will be an effective means to legislate and the protection for our rangatahi, for our young people. However, and this is a however, there is a gap between the two sections of 30k zones. It's a 150 metre section where it goes from 30 to 50 and back to 30, and so there won't be any legislative protection for our road users crossing in that section, and that's an area where I feel through bureaucracy young people could end up in a situation which is undesirable. I'm not sure how that gets fixed. That's up to council to work through those kind of technicalities. However, we'd like to see a safe, predictable, consistent 30k zone all the way down Murphy Road. And I think any one of you would agree that that would be the desired outcome as well, and that's what you're looking to implement. So thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for your actual, hands-on support for Taradale young people, and we appreciate the work you've done. This is a fantastic proposal. Our previous principal has been working on it with your team. Our current principal is very supportive. I know the other principals in the other schools would be as well if they were here to speak. So we appreciate your work, and hopefully there's a little anomaly on your zoning that could be tweaked up somehow. So thank you for that. I'll open for any questions. And speaking to young people, some actually said maybe to increase the speed to teach the kids a lesson who didn't look both ways, but that's not the majority opinion. It's just social Darwinism at play in a high school. But yeah, the majority I spoke to obviously in favour of this proposal. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Duncan. And just confirming for you that we did ask council officers earlier if there's the ability to tweak those zones, how they've been set. So we've been advised that we can apply to NZTA for that.
Oh, that's fantastic news. Thank you,
So
Mayor.
there is a mechanism for us to review what's currently being proposed.
I really appreciate that work you've done already. Thank you.
Open up for questions. Councillor Tapney.
Greetings. Thank you for your submission. The map where you suggested those highlighted areas, well, we overlaid the highlighted areas for impacted changes, and yeah, that's the one. So the 30k area of concern is along the Murphy Road, that gap in the Murphy Road?
Yeah, so this, on the T intersection, the one across the top would be a Miani Road, and then the two sections coming down is Murphy Road. The first section to the north of the map is Taradale Intermediate School, and the second section is Taradale High School. And so those two signposts are the two demarcations of those current zones, where they're not speed restricted zones currently, and there is a gap in between those two zones.
So my question is, when your students who came and did an excellent presentation to council during the LTP, they mentioned that there is quite a large volume of students coming down the Miani Road off the Guppy Road intersection, and that's a bit of a main feeder, and I noticed that it's not a part of your submissions or any part of highlighted concern? Are you quite happy as far as your interaction with students around that particular patch of the road?
The primary concern is at an intersection level, to create a safe environment for students to both exit and enter Murphy Road from Miani Road. Part of the submission from the rangatahi last time was around creating a designated cycleway with traffic lights that had sensors for bikes. These are rolled out across New Zealand, and they could be implemented in a space like this to create some safety and some certainty for both the vulnerable road user and the car driver around rights of way and places on the road. So provided that you pass the speed limit restriction outside in the intersection there to reduce the rest of the road, does have sufficient width in designated cycleways. There is, however, work to be done to potentially, as part of the long-term plan, to add some protection or demarcation other than road markings to create a bit more certainty for both users and cars.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Councillor Boak.
Yes. Thank you very much for your submission and that very sensible suggestion you made to bridge the gap. I assume that's between the intermediate school and the secondary school there?
That's correct, yes.
I assume also that the intermediate school is fully supportive of this being extended.
Indeed they are, yes indeed.
That's interesting. I just wondered, it's a similar situation to Tamatea High School and Tamatea Intermediate, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't know if they have that gap as well, and or if we should consider that perhaps if we're looking at your school, if they're in a similar situation.
It would make sense. They almost mirror image in terms of physical layout in the city. So I haven't particularly looked at that, but council officers could potentially look at that to make sure that there's consistency across all areas in these zones.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you very much for your time today, Duncan, and pass on our thanks to Tom and Libby as well for these submissions.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to invite Forbes Neil to present to us, please. Welcome, Forbes. We have seen you before. Just a reminder, you have 10 minutes to present. A bell will ring at 5 minutes, just to let you know that we're halfway there. And the 10 minutes includes questions from councillors. But welcome. Good to see you here today.
Or my taser anytime.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a relative newcomer to Napier, and I studied the proposal for speed limits, both the one 2 years ago and this year's one, and coming from a planning background in Auckland and driving a lot around Napier, I would like to support the Council's proposed changes. As you look at your list, the urban school zones, I certainly agree to the lowering of speed limits around schools, the lowering of limits in the CBD, Sandy Road, a road which I use quite a lot. I support that lowering of the limit. Tannery Road, I support lowering. Burness, agree to that too. Over the page, Springfield Road, definitely support that one. It's I was on that road yesterday. It's an undulating, winding road,
and it has a lot of traffic now from the Redcliffe rubbish dump. I would certainly support that. I noted some months ago there were temporary signs up suggesting 60k. I saw complaints in the newspaper about the signs. Yesterday when I went along Springfield Road, there were no temporary signs and the limit was 100, but I would certainly support the lowering the limit to 60. Elliott Road, yes, lower that one, particularly with the new retirement village at the northern end near Harold Holt. Going down the list, Awatoto Road, where it nears Miani Road, definitely lower that. Sandy Road, same intersection, lower that. Brookfields Road, lower that. And I noticed that coming out of Sandy Road into Miani Road, the visibility looking back to Brookfields Road is very poor. So I certainly support lowering the limit on Brookfields Road. Gloucester Street, yes, 50, and that would be all the way along to the bridge from Taradale Town. To Our Avenue, yes, with the increase of housing, lower that to 50. Erickson Road, again, with housing increasing there, lower to 50. Kenny Road, the same. Marine Parade, well, I think the councillors will be well aware of the number of problems that have been on Marine Parade in recent months. Lower that to 30. And the last of all, the Simons Lane, the service lane on the west side of Taradale, lower from 50 to 20. Well, there are already 4 speed humps on that roadway and 10 kpm road signs. I consider the 10 kpm would be quite suitable for that. Thank you. That is all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Forbes. I'll just open to councillors for any questions they may have. It would appear there's none, so thank you very much for your time today and for your submission. We don't have any other submitters waiting to present.
Only 2 more, aren't there?
I'll bring it up. That was amazing. Okay. So I've just been advised that our remaining submitters in this session have either advised they're not attending or we've been unable to get hold of them. So that means that we can actually head into deliberations. And what I'd like to suggest we do is essentially just to work through the schedule that's before us, and as we go through each proposal, invite councillors to ask any questions they may have of council officers, or essentially open up for discussion. Before we do that, however, I would like to invite Robin to speak to us regarding Willowbank Road, as we have been advised that we cannot actually implement any change on this because it wasn't part of the consultation, but Robin can explain to us what we can do going forward with regards to this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have checked and we wouldn't be able to add Willowbank Road into the current process. What we can do and what we will do is include it in the next review. That sounds many years off, but the new legislation requires us as a region, so the Hawke's Bay, to have a speed management plan in place. So the 5 councils will work together and pull that together. So that's going to be over the next year or so. So we will have a further review of our speed limits in the coming sort of 18 months.
Thank you. Can I suggest that we do actually add that to our resolution before us today as an E to ensure that Willowbank Road is included in the next review of speed limits?
Absolutely, and there may be others, I guess, which may come up.
Councillor McGrath and then Councillor Tapani.
Just through the chair, does the council have the option to set temporary speed limits in cases like this if it required?
We can set temporary speed limits, but generally only if there's something going on, so roadworks or so the speed limits at Springfield Road changed, and we managed to get over 12 months of the temporary out of those till we got our wrists slapped by NZTA, and then we had to remove them. So that's why some of the submitters have noted that the speeds went up and down and up and down. So no, not legitimately. We are pretty much bound to those traffic management regulations to introduce those reduced speeds or an emergency.
Councillor Tapani.
So I think Robin may have already answered my question, Your Worship. So just for my own clarity, are there any options available to the staff in any work coming up between now and the potential review, such as the district plan, etc., that might enable us an opportunity to provide some work in that space? I'm just conscious that because we've missed this opportunity, it will stand out amongst our residents as being inconsistent with other speed limits around the area and may result in a consistent flow of comments to our staff and council. So I think you may have already answered the question, but just to be absolutely sure, are there any avenues of engagement or potential alignment and work across council that we might be able to maximise on?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I guess the legislative route is closed until we do another review. However, if council does feel strongly, we can certainly look down the driving environment and potentially try and manage speeds through that avenue rather than the speed limit itself.
A supplementary. Thank you, through Your Worship. So just remind me again, please, Robin, when would the next review be? Given this one was run, but COVID has impacted on our ability to interact with it. When will the next review be, and how likely is it that it's to be impacted by any potential pandemic operations or
through Madam Mayor, the opportunity should be within the next 18 months to do that regional review. I think we've got our working practices sorted out now, so further interruptions such as lockdowns probably won't interfere with that too much.
And just one final question for you, Robin. With this proposed work in about 18 months across the 5 authorities, are we likely to see a strong focus on consistency around where our boundaries mix? As was mentioned earlier today, we've got a switch between a 60 and 100k zone, etc., etc. So is that part of the reason why we're looking at a 5 LTA work stream?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, that's just the new legislation requires that. But it is to maintain that level of consistency across borders. Now, subject to any changes to the current proposal, we will only have Springfield Road, which will have a different speed limit on the Hastings side to the Napier side. All the rest will be consistent 80s then.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate that.
Councillor Bogue.
With your permission, Madam Mayor, if I could just ask Robin a general question about some of the traffic calming issues that have been brought up. I'd like to thank the roading staff for the amazing work you have done in many of our suburban areas to make the roads safer. I think there's been a lot of good work done and we do appreciate it, even though I know some of the residents, not all the residents are as complimentary, but I do appreciate it was all about making our suburbs straighter and safer. Thank you for that. I just wanted to ask about the speed bumps. I understand before a traffic calming installation is put in place, there is data gathered, you know, with those strips and all that sort of thing. After something like that has been installed, speed bumps or whatever, is there further data gathered to see what difference it has made and if needs be changes made as a result? Is that part of the practice, please?
Yes, through you, Worship. Yes, we do post-installation monitoring. We'll generally leave it a good 3 months for things to settle down and for people to get accustomed to the new environment, so we don't do it as soon as it's been done. But yes, we will always check to see if things have been effective.
Thank you for that. So just reconfirming that we're adding an E to the resolution that Willowbank Road will be included in the regional review due to be undertaken in approximately 18 months. And now we'll continue on and work through the list before us, starting with the urban school zones variable limits from 50 to 30 or 40. As we are all aware, some schools have been approved as 30 and the others are remaining are staying at the 40. And I think we probably need to tease this out a little bit in light of some of the submissions that we've had from the schools. And I would like to, for example, suggest that we do ask for the Murphy Road zones to be looked at to sort of clear up that 150 metre anomaly in between the two schools.
Absolutely, Your Worship. We're just discussing it now. We shouldn't have any problem. We shouldn't even need NZTA approval for that one, just because it's on the same road. So it would just be an extension of one of the zones to meet the other.
Fantastic. And if we could also have a look at Freiburg Ave for the two Tamatea schools and to see if there's an anomaly like that there too.
Yep. Again, those are both only approved for 40k at the moment, so we will be revisiting those to try and get them down to the 30. So they'll be in the second tranche of the review anyway. So yeah, there's no reason why we can't. I think it is slightly longer, so we will just double check that. If extending the zone becomes impractical and makes it too long and therefore compliance will be poor, we would look at some physical calming in the gap to make sure we maintain that speed.
Thank you.
Mayor, can officers just have a few moments to further discuss Willowbank Road?
Oh, yes.
That will mean it probably.
Yep. Okay, just a 5-minute adjournment.
Adding Port School to that.
We'll re-adjourn. Now, just to let you know, we will actually be leaving Willowbank Road, and we'll come back to that at the end of deliberations, just to have some further conversation about that, and a process that we can put in place around that. And the reason I'd prefer to defer that to the end is in case we do actually identify anything else during the course of our deliberations this morning that we would like council officers to take a closer look at as well. So just to return to where we were, and with regards to the Murphy Road and the 2 schools on there, we are adding an F to our resolution, which I now don't have in front of me, and which Carolyn will pop up on the screen. We go, so thank you, Carolyn. And we will also need to make a note of the Freiburg Ave, and I think just to note that they will be included in the next NZTA application for consideration for the 30-kilometre zoning, and that is a part of that process. The area between the 2 schools will be looked at and considered. I think if we include it as part of the resolution, yeah. Councillor Price.
Thank you. I was just going back to the Port School now, which we actually have got a submission that we need to cover, but it was similar. What she was trying to do was extend the area of
the 30-kilometre zone.
Yeah, the
yes,
zone.
That's correct. So we've been advised by council officers that due to the extent of the area that would need to be changed for that one, it would require further consultation. So I'd just like to earmark that to be something that we also come back to at the end of deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions around the urban school zones? Okay, so noting...
Okay. Just, will, once this... This is carried. Do they get the flashing lights? Do all the schools, are they all going to have those flashing lights that some schools have now?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's the next step, is to get all those installed.
Great.
So just clarifying here that essentially what we are saying is we are accepting the lists that we have received which advise the schools whether they are 30-kilometre or 40-kilometre, and we are happy with those recommendations as they've been put forward, noting that we've asked for Murphy Road to have this extension, Freiburg Ave to be looked at in the next round of applications, and we will be carrying on some discussion around Port Hariri School Battery Road later in deliberations. Next up we have the Napier Cbd, which the recommendation is a reduction from 50 kilometres to 30 kilometres. I open up for questions from councillors. Councillor Bogue.
Can I speak in support of this? Is it appropriate for me to speak for or against at this stage?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. No, I speak in support of lowering the speed to 30 kilometres an hour. As a cyclist, it's quite challenging to ride my bike through town and in town. And one of the factors is the traffic speed. People get very impatient behind me, even on my e-bike when I might be going 25 or whatever. I feel if there was a strong message for traffic to proceed slower, it would make it much safer for cyclists, because if you've got a car behind you that's wanting to pass you on a bike and you start moving closer, I'm just thinking of Tennyson Street, moving closer to the parked cars, you have this quite real danger of people opening their car doors and smashing into you. So I think we are trying to provide opportunities for people to use alternatives to their cars, and I think that reducing the speed would send a message to all our citizens, including those in cars, that the CBD is a safe place for people to ride their bikes and for pedestrians, because the traffic's a bit slower. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. And I guess for sake of process, if there's someone who is wanting to speak against any of these recommendations, then, obviously please take the opportunity to do that as we work through, and we can perhaps take a note of any of those that may need to be voted on separately, because I don't think we want to sit here and vote separately on every single recommendation, but we can note those ones where there may be people wanting to speak against and the need to vote on that separately. So anything further with regards to the Napier CBD? Deputy Mayor Brosnan, followed by Councillor Price.
Through you, Your Worship, in acknowledging Councillor Bogue's conversation around that perception of safety, I just wonder if it would be helpful for the debate for our staff if you could run through some of the real safety issues we have seen in the CBD as a result of speed. For instance, some of those factual stuff around crashes or incidents with pedestrians or cyclists.
Through Your Worship, obviously the CBD is the area where we have the highest level of potential conflicts between particularly pedestrians and cars. Drivers who are parking are, I guess, less aware of what's going on around them as well. The blanket 30k is just a risk reduction measure. It is not the be-all and end-all. We are processing that same area through the district plan to give us further benefits, and of course, as we go forward with things like the civic precinct, then the actual environment will start to support that more shared idea.
Sorry, through you, Your Worship, I probably should have clarified. I understand that perception of risk. I suppose what I was looking for is, do we have a real issue at the moment? Are we seeing crashes? Are we seeing instances with pedestrians and cyclists? Understanding that perception already exists, and that risk that Councillor Bogue was talking about as well. I suppose I'm looking for some numbers probably from you.
Yeah, certainly. You just give Tony, it looks like he's beavering away in the background there, so if we can just put that one on the table for a minute.
Thank you.
Councillor Price.
I just have concerns about the flow of it all. You can drive down Shakespeare Road at 50 k's and then hit the bottom of Shakespeare Road and you've got to slow down to 20 k's. Same for Milton Road, and I think there might be others, but I just feel that the flow of the city area won't be clear with the change midway, and I think 30 k's is pretty slow, but I take Councillor Bogue's point, but at 30 k's if you biked into a door that was opening, you probably...
Not as bad as...
Is that what you're talking about, or...? Yeah, I just feel like we're taking the speed down too much. Thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, just through the chair. Over the years, our CBD's actually changed a lot. We've narrowed streets down, and when you've got cars parked both sides, it actually slows the traffic right down. We've got buses, cars, trucks, couriers, and we've gone as a council back into maximising our car parking spaces. We're also a tourist town, and we have a lot of people, give or take COVID, wandering around who actually don't even know what side the traffic is coming from to them. So to slow things down, I think, is going to be very good. What I don't like about how we do traffic is we wait till someone dies or gets injured and they clock up so many points, then we have to do things. Everything else with health and safety, it's actually about preventing it happen. So, I mean, if it's been identified that there's risk, then I think we have to look at it, not wait till something happens.
Councillor Tapani.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Tony, sorry, Robin, this information might be coming with the figures that the team are crunching out. But with the changes, as Councillor McGrath's indicated, in the number of pedestrian crossings, speed humps in the CBD area, do we have any data which indicates that actually the flow of traffic is currently at 50? Because when I drive through the CBD, mitigating for volumes of pedestrian vehicles in those speed humps, I would find it difficult to get up to 50 in some parts of our CBD. So I'm wondering, from a purely practical point of view, do we have data that supports that currently, with the mitigation measures we have in place, the average speed of our citizens is pretty much close to 30 more than it is to 50? What's the data tell us?
Yeah. Through you, Worship, the sections, obviously Emerson Street is very highly calmed. Half of Dalton Street and most of Dickens Street will be operating probably below that 30k, as will the very busy chunk of Hastings Street. There are other parts of the CBD as identified here where actually probably 50 is much more often achieved and broken. So the idea is just to have that blanket message. I guess when you enter the CBD, you're entering a slower zone. It's a much more proactive move, I guess. It's not in response to registered very high speeds. Obviously, as you say, we've got a lot of courtesy crossings and the like, lots of parking activity. All these things slow the vehicles down anyway.
Thank you.
Tony, great.
To you, Madam Mayor. So, in the last 10 years, there have been 39 vulnerable users, pedestrians, cyclists.
Sorry, can you speak up, please? And the mic on.
Just turning it up now. Talk.
Yeah?
Yeah, thank
that
you.
Better. So there have been 39 vulnerable users hit. Crashes involving those that have been reported, I should say. And that does include a fatal. I'm just going to see how many serious there were, sorry. Bear with me. There was 1 fatal, 8 serious, and the rest were minor or non-injury crashes.
Just Tony, just confirming that's in the zone that we're proposing.
That's just the CBD. Yeah.
CBD zone. Yeah.
Any further questions? Would anyone like to propose anything different to what the recommendation is of the 50 to 30? Right. Moving on to Sandy Road from 100 to 80. Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, excuse me. I do have a bit of an issue with any roads that kind of lead out of the city. Obviously, this is one of the roads that we have the ability to change. NZTA have done a not so good job of the expressway. So I'm just a bit hesitant to lower the speeds of any road outside of Napier because it's an alternative, and it would seem to me that people would go the other way and go the expressway, which would make that even worse. So that's what I've got to say about Sandy Road.
Thank you, Councillor Mawson. I guess I'd like to comment on, we know Sandy Road is probably one of our more dangerous roads, and there has been some horrific crashes on this piece of road in recent years. And for that reason, I personally fully support the reduction to 80 kilometres an hour. Any further comments?
If we're welcoming comments, and so that for me, Sandy Road's, other than those accidents, also sticks out like Willowbank as being out of alignment with the streets around it. So while I agree with providing access in and out of the city, at the end of Sandy Road, at the end of Brooksville's, there's another 80k zone in Hastings, and so even if you travel at speed in that space, you're going to have to reduce back to an 80k zone. So it would be beneficial for consistency of messaging, safety, etc., that matches its neighbouring streets at 80 kilometres per hour.
Thank you, Councillor Tapani. If there's no further discussion, we'll move on to Hales Road. And again, we have a number of these roads here which are similar to Sandy Road in that they are leading in and out between Hastings District and ourselves, and they're all being recommended to do the 100 to 80. One of the advantage of this is of course aligning with our neighbours and having that consistency. So I guess if we work through, and if there's any of these roads in particular that you would like to stop and discuss further, please just stop me as I read through the list. So Hales Road, Sears Road, Jessup Road, King Road, Brookfields Road. Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, Brookfields Road, I've got no problem with the area that cruises off to the right when it hits Sandy Road, being 80k, but just again, for the same reason, I feel that Brookfield to the end to the bridge should remain at 100.
Is there any other support for that remaining at 100? Tannery Road.
Your Worship.
Yep.
Councillor Mawson, and then Councillor Tapani.
Yeah, same deal. That's quite a nice straight bit of road, and I think it's just been 100 for the sake of being 100. 80 for the sake of being 80. I do understand the consistency, but yeah, I feel it's a straight bit of road, so 100's fine.
Councillor Tapani.
I was wondering if I could get some information from our staff, just some background, particularly around Tannery Road meets Miani Road. I know that there have been a number of changes to the speeds in those areas. Do we have any data and indicators around improvements in safety, reduction in accidents during those changes? And also during the LTP, we had a few submissions around concerning behaviour on Tannery Road and what we might be able to do around mitigating some of that behaviour. We're getting a build-up of intensification at the city end of Tannery Road with a booper going in on Jervois, etc. and others. So could the staff provide me with a recommendation or advice around what would be, are we looking to get a consistent speed across those roads that lead to and connect to Tannery in that Awatoto and Jervois area? That's the interpretation I'm reading. I'm looking for confirmation.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. It's trying to have a consistent message on speed. You'll note that there's a 50k just by the new retirement village. So there will be that threshold, that urban threshold there.
Thank you, Robin. And Councillor Mawson, just to let you know, I am noting the ones that you've spoken against, and we can take those out separately and vote on them independently if to give you an opportunity to vote against.
Sorry, Your Worship. Please excuse my ignorance. Could you tell me what the current speed limit on Miani Road is, please? Or was it on the list?
50 and 70.
Yes, 50, 70, 50.
And the 80 for Tannery is based on?
That's what's coming through as the safe and appropriate speed, based on the infrastructure risk rating.
Okay, thank you.
Just for your notes, Your Worship, could we take the CBD separately also? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Burness Road, Waverley Road, Puketitari Road, Paraiati Road, Nilgiri Road, Boyd Road, Pineley Drive, Ballantyne Road, Ballantyne Place, Longview Road, Penrith Road, Silverton Road, Quarry Ridge. This one might get a bit more conversation. Prebinson Drive, west of State Highway 50, and this is where we currently have a 70 which merges into a 100, and the recommendation is that that whole area of Prebinson Drive is changed to 80 kilometres. Councillor McGrath.
Can I just hear again, if I've missed it, why our officers think that needs to change that specific area? Because I think it was the AA said it was an absolute fine stretch of road for 100. Why is it that we're thinking differently on there?
So through you, Madam Mayor, again, the safe and appropriate speed, which is what we take as our initial, so I guess it's our launching spot for doing further analysis. That was recommending 80, I believe. We have had a couple of fatalities out there. The safe and appropriate speed was 60, which we didn't think. I can hand over to Tony now. He's got some information. Thanks.
Sorry, Robbie.
Disaster.
Sorry. Yeah, I got the information here. From the expressway to Arutu is safe and appropriate is 80, and then from Arutu through to Clyde Jeffrey is safe and appropriate is 60 on mega maps. We obviously didn't think 60 is appropriate. There has been a couple of fatals on there, so that's why we believe 80 is the most appropriate speed.
So is that assessed off the road itself or the conditions around the road? Because there's not much coming off there. What's making a very wide stretch of road suddenly go from 100 to 60 in the recommendations from NZTA?
The one fatal.
So, through you, Madam Mayor. So the infrastructure risk rating looks at not only the road and its alignment, but also the roadside hazards. We do have guardrail through there, but as you'll know, not everybody catches that. We do spend quite a lot of money replacing those guardrails. So it's the risk of what happens when people come off. The frequency that we have those accidents is obviously added into those algorithms as well. So while it does appear, well, it is a fairly new bit of road and that was designed, to my understanding, to 100k, certainly that's at the far edge of its practical safety.
Thank you.
Councillor Simpson, you look like you're dying to say something, but you haven't got your hand up.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, I'm sort of sitting here and looking at these changes, and our earlier submitter, Mr. Hinton, was it? Said, what is the fundamental difference between 180 and what's the fundamental difference between I use the term gap, the gap between 180, between 70 and 50, between 50 and 30. The gap that he actually didn't refer to is the gap between people's ears, because I think that's fundamentally what is part of the problem in our roading network. I use Prebinson Drive 4, 5, 6 times a day at times, and the most frustrating thing about Prebinson Drive is that it's signposted at 100 and you've got people doing 50 on it. And that is the most frustrating part of our roading network, and I think that's the thing we have to be careful of, and that was what was alluded to earlier on about consistency across the network. In other words, people coming into our network or travelling through our network every day, where is our consistency? In other words, the environment they are in, are we anticipating that they're going to be doing equivalent speeds no matter where within the environment? If it's similar, then why aren't they allowed to do similar speeds? And I think it's all about people's situational awareness, it's about the hazards, and what we're seeing here is a highly designed road with one or two side roads, if we include Clyde Jeffrey and go right the way through to the state highway. There are two side roads on that stretch of road, and they're both well designed. And I think we have to be sensible. Is this tinkering for the sake of tinkering? You know, are we really being practical and sensible? Because the other thing is, it's just rules for the sake of friggin' rules, because no one's going to enforce this. How often is someone going to sit there and say, oh, you're now going to get prosecuted for that? We don't have the authority. So the question really is around, we're making all these changes, what is going to come out of it? You know, are the police going to increase their enforcement? They don't have capacity, although one of our submitters earlier, thank goodness, showed us how many police are in our district when there is a road hazard accident. Suddenly the road's full of police cars and road traffic safety staff. Otherwise, where are they? And I think that's the thing we have to be really careful about here. Policy and policy change and restrictions and rules for rules' sake is not necessarily making our environment better or safer or more understandable. And that's why I'm sitting here quietly seething about some of the changes and saying, you know, while I agree with some, what we're actually dealing with here is friggin' common sense. And we know that there's some people in our society that perhaps lack some common sense, and there's lots of people in our society, particularly with the ageing demographic, who are overly cautious. And I think that's what are we trying to manage here? Is it truly speed on road, or is it social environment and you know, the way people move about? And I think the risk we face by having chopping and changing rules in equivalent but different environments actually adds to confusion as to how fast people should go. I've regularly driven down Prebinson Drive, getting back to the matter at hand, and wondered why the hell we don't have more signs saying to people, you can actually drive at 100k down here, because if they miss that first one, because the first sign is right at, what's the road that goes off to the cemetery? Not Oak.
Cato.
Sorry?
Cato.
Prize Road. Cato Road. The sign is right there. Most people miss the 100k sign because they're distracted by the intersections. And so by the time you get round the bend, where you could easily be doing more than 100, but let's say everyone should be doing 100 safely, they're still doing 75 because that's the zone that they came from. And that's about consistency, because they've come from a 50 to a 70, they missed the 100k zone, so they continue to do 70 around Prebinson Drive. You know, we've just got to be careful here about what we're actually trying to implement, and at the end of the day, tinkering with speed changes, are they actually going to add to a safer environment? No, that's my question. And I sort of sit here and I read it and I say, look, I could easily just say, oh yeah, just get on with it. But at the end of the day, I think we're just going to be careful about how we apply these things consistently, so that people on Willowbank Road that are able to do 100k's, when they move across to Tannery Road, slightly different environment. Willowbank's got less interconnections. Tannery Road's got more agricultural connections. You know, what is the situational awareness? What are we trying to solve? Is there statistics? And when we look through that AA report, they continually ask the question, what is it that is triggering this change? Where is the indicators that demonstrate an increased or current or inherent risks in this piece of road? And sometimes those questions aren't answered. And that's my frustration with sitting here going through this process. So thank you for allowing me to have my explanation of frustration, but you know, we're just going to be careful here about introducing policy and change for the sake of it.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson, and I completely understand your frustration. And I think we need to be conscious that we can only control and change and make policy based on our information that we're receiving, and we need to take and play our role in making our roads safer, and that's not enforcement. it is ensuring that we've got the appropriate speed limits in various areas. And we need to rely on the advice from experts to do that, whether it be NZTA, which my understanding is that these recommendations before us today have been based on modelling and advice that we receive from NZTA, and I appreciate AA might not be in agreement with that, but we're taking our advice from the National Transport Agency. And I also very much agree with you around consistency, and I think in particular Prebinson Drive at the moment is an example where the lack of consistency creates frustration. So for me, and look, whether it be 80 or 100, but I don't think it would be appropriate for the whole of Prebinson Drive to be 100, but having consistency on that road would actually resolve issues, I think, and also around other areas within our city, having those consistencies, because it's when people don't know and where it does swap and change all the time that they will tend to probably drive slower because they're not sure exactly what sort of zone they're in at that point in time. And I guess the alignment with Hastings is something else I'm very conscious of, because I know for a fact myself, certainly when I'm driving in Hastings, sometimes you're uncertain as to whether it's a 100 kilometre or an 80 kilometre. And there does seem to be a move from NZTA, from Waka Kotahi, towards these recommendations of 80 kilometres on the rural roads, which are, though, close to our urban areas and arterial roads into our urban areas, which is, I think, what the recommendations before us today have been based on, this move at a national level to have some consistency around these types of roads that are close to our urban areas. And I don't know if that's just me surmising something that's not correct, Robin and Tony, but if you'd like to add to that.
That's spot on, Your Worship.
Councillor McGrath.
Just following on from that, you made a comment, making our roads slower makes them safer. But with everything in front of us here, it's almost about making everything slower to make it safer, and we haven't sort of delved too much into actually changing the engineering of our roads to make them safer. Whereas for me, when we're talking about Prebinson Drive here, the council did a really good job of making the road to some degree safe for 100 k's, but there's issues within it. And I think at some stage we're going to need to have a conversation as do we spend the money around engineering that road to make it safe perhaps at 100 k's, rather than just copping out and going, oh, this is easier just to drop the speed limit. So I'd like to have a conversation and see that somewhere into the future.
Councillor Crystal.
Just for those watching and for myself, can you please, I'm driving from Taradale down Church Road. I get to the roundabout at Bukatichu Road. From there on, is it 80? No.
You're still in the 70 at the roundabout.
Yeah.
It's at
So
Cato,
where's it changing?
Cato Road is the...
So you're still going 50, 70, 80?
Yep.
Okay. And then where does it go down again then?
The roundabout with the expressway.
The expressway. So then it's 80 from Tamatea between those two roundabouts? Between the roundabout?
Yes, that's correct.
Tutu Road.
Okay, sorry, so I need some clarity here as well.
Yeah.
So we're going 50, 70, 80, 70, 50 throughout the length of Prebinson, or like leading onto it and then off again?
If you're coming all the way back through to Hyderabad Road from Church Road, yes. Although some of the 70 and the 50, the last bit, is of course now NZTA's State Highway, Prebinson. So you would, on the section between the expressway and Church Road, you'd be Church Road 50k, 70k through past the Clyde Jeffrey entrance, and then 80k from that point on, right round to the expressway.
Okay. And then it drops back to 70 between the expressway and leading up to the railway crossing at Hyderabad roundabout. Is there the ability to actually make that consistent the whole way through, whether that be 70 or 80, but just remove the...
So the agency is allowed to put 70k limits in, but nobody else is. So you'll notice the only bits of 70k generally are on state highways. We do have a couple, so we've got a little bit in Miani, and we've got a little bit which is talking about the base of between Church Road and Prebinson. We could certainly talk to the agency, but inconsistencies on roads like that are what the regional speed management guide will look at. So it will pick up on things like Prebinson Drive being 70 and then 50, yet having a fairly low risk rating.
Explain a little bit something for me, please, Robin, there. So with regards to this piece of work where you're talking about the five, or the LTAs getting together, and you also referred to the 70k zone being applied by the Transport Authority, correct?
That's correct.
So how much scope do our staff have in 18 months' time to work with that 70k zone that is implemented by NZTA and not us? How does our work that we're doing provide that opportunity to make changes later if this is a designation put on by New Zealand Transport Authority? How do we get alignment between their expression and our desire?
So through your worship, that's the development of that regional strategy will be a joint and collaborative process. It's not going to be each of the LCOs putting in what they think for their zone. The whole thing will be developed as a group, and that group includes Waka Kotahi for the state highways.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have earmarked that this will be taken separately for Prebinson Drive, and I suspect potentially the next one too, Awatoto Road. Councillor Mawson.
The same reason.
Now, we were seeking clarification on this one with regards to the NZTA position.
Yeah, and they agreed with the
reduction to 80.
Yeah.
Next, we have Hill Road. And then Springfield Road, which is the 100 to 60. Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, I think the drop from 100 to 60 is probably a little bit too much, and a few times I've heard consistency used on both sides of the argument or debate. I think that 80k is probably a little more suitable there. I certainly took on board one of the submitters about how rubbish would fly off from someone putting their rubbish, and that was something that I didn't think about, putting it all together in 50k zone, and then all of a sudden it flying off the back of the trailer because I've hit 100. So I kind of get that as well. And I appreciate that I've been to the transfer station and had experienced a few bits and pieces on the side of the road, so I get that. I just think that the 60k is a little bit... I mean, yes, if people can't drive, and we've seen a lot of that lately, then that would be quite a scary road for people, and I do actually acknowledge one of the submitters saying that road is quite greasy, but certainly looking at it from a driving perspective, and I do enjoy my driving, that at 60k an hour is probably a little bit too slow.
Councillor Crown.
Through the Mayor, sorry, this is actually in regards to item 25, so back to Hill Road.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in the submissions from Eskdale School, and I was wondering, are they covered by they're not an urban school, so are they covered by the variable limits in point 1, or are we deciding that if we go from 100 down to 80, that includes past their school as well on that road?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, there is no proposal for a school zone there because it's not in the urban zone. We would have a different process to go through for that.
So it cannot be included in this process?
It can't be included in this one, but we could certainly add it in.
Yeah, I'd be interested in
I'm
seeing if we
happy
could
to
add that.
I'm happy to add that as well.
Yep. Sorry.
I'll just add on that I think the variable speed limit for that would be 60. rather
Okay.
than-
Is that
rather than
under the
40.
school zone
It's under the-
guidelines?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll add that to our list to discuss at the end of the rest of these. So the Hill Road that we've got on here, 100 to 80, I see as actually being a separate issue, and then we would be looking at, yeah, thank you, Councillor Crown. Okay, Ulat Road, 100 to 50. Miani Road, and there was actually the two separate sections in here. There was the section near the dairy, etc., where there was a proposal that might increase to 60, and that the remainder of the road heading towards Taradale would increase to 80. But the recommendation before us is that there actually ends up there's no change to either of those two areas, that they remain at 50 and 70. Puketapu Road from 100 to 50.
Just after some clarity, so our boundary's literally just around those corners, isn't it? Say 50k an hour.
That's correct.
And it's already 50 to the point where you've got the graveyard on the right-hand side, and then it comes around the hill and it's 100 there?
It's actually the legal speed limit and where the signposts are don't tally, actually. So at the moment, the legal 50 does extend beyond where we've got signs. But yes, that's effectively what's happening now, is you've got 50k up to the two sort of hairpin bends just above the cemetery, and then it's the open road speed limit beyond that. So you're just talking about extending the 50 beyond to its legal position.
So through those two bends and then pretty much the straights through to Hastings anyway?
You climb up, yep.
And that would go back to 100 or whatever Hastings choose?
When you get up to the top.
Yeah, so just clearing the hill and those two winding corners.
Madam Mayor, could I just have some clarification over what exactly is the recommendation for Miani Road in the light of the submissions we had from the Taradale School and other submitters? What is the actual
So that
decision?
part of Miani Road, Councillor Bogue, is the other end of Miani Road, where it extends down to Willowbank and Tannery goes onto it. So where the old churches and where the fresh veggie producers, etc. are. And so what the recommendation we've got before us now is that there's actually no change to those existing speed limits, which are 50 through the small area there that there's the dairy, etc., and 70 as you head towards Taradale, and then it returns to 50 just sort of as you get past Jervois Town and before you hit the Peanut roundabout there.
That's not 80, that wasn't recommended, no.
Originally, we were looking at increasing the speed along that section to 80k, but that's wasn't supported by NZTA, so we dropped that proposal.
And there were a number of submissions of people that live along that road as well who were very concerned about the proposed increase to 80. So,
Good, thank you.
Onehunga Road, western end from 100 to 50. Councillor Mawson.
Just a little bit of clarity on that. So is that you get past the rugby club on the right-hand side, past the gun club, and it's where because you've got that bit of land either side, farming land and so forth, and park and reserve.
Yep.
Is it where you hit that next corner into the residential side, that becomes 50 from there?
That's correct.
So other than that, it's still 80 or?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm happy with that.
Just clarification there, we're talking 50k right down Onehunga Road?
No.
No.
Just from
Not.
the,
Just at the residential end, so
sorry.
at the far end.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I was going to say
That's from
50 all the way down would be very, very harsh.
No, just at that western end.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
So what's the demarcator in environments like that? Is that like the intersection of Windmill Road becomes the change point, or does the change in the middle of a straight stretch? Or what signals to people's minds that there is a change needed in speed?
So, through you, Chair, generally we would try and have a, particularly in a 100 to 50 environment, we would try to have a gateway. That doesn't necessarily need to be actual gates, but some sort of double signage, for instance, at least.
Yep.
Maybe the village name or something similar. It's something that we are going to do and are in the process of doing at the southern end of the new residential home on Elliott Road. Just where it goes into Tannery there, we do have to identify those thresholds physically with a little bit more than just the signs.
Okay.
Process question, please, Your Worship. So will we still get I see we're rolling through the list. Will we get a chance to speak to some of these things again before the conclusion of deliberations?
I'm asking you to indicate to me any of those that you wish to be separated out when we do the vote, and I'm making a note of them so that we will take those separately to enable further debate before we vote on them.
And just for my own clarity, did anyone put their hand up seeking further clarity around the Springfield Road?
Yes.
And, oh yeah, cool, thank you.
I got you, Uppy.
Thank you. Sorry, team.
Next we have Awatoto Road, the 250 metres from the intersection of Miani Road, and this is 100 to 50. So this is just that small section in the lead up to the Miani Road intersection, is that correct? The 250 metre lead up there?
That's correct, Your Worship. So it comes in tandem, or tridem, I guess, with the Sandy Bird and Brookfields roads, which are similarly identified. It's just to reduce speeds as we come into that high-risk intersection.
So that covers Sandy Road as well for the same basis for that change, and also Brookfields Road. Next we have Tamatea Drive from 70 to 50.
Yeah, until there's more development there, I feel like 70 km an hour is actually acceptable at the moment. I mean, there's an area for cyclists and so forth that keeps them away from the road, and it's a well-designed road. So I think that's 70 at the moment. I mean, I appreciate there could be some development there in the future, but I think if we're doing another review in a year and a half, it will probably be a bit more appropriate then.
Okay, I'll earmark that to vote on separately later. Gloucester Street from 70 to 50, and this of course is the area out by EIT as we lead into Springfields Road. Tiawa Avenue from 70 to 50. I just wanted to clarify here, was that the whole length of Tiawa Road or a portion of it?
Sorry, I'll just have to pass this one to Tony, I can't remember.
70. It's 50 and 70, Your Worship. It goes 50 and then 70 when you get into the new development area.
So that's the recommendation is we've got from a reduction from 70 to 50, and I'm just wanting to confirm if that's going to be for the length of the whole road.
Yeah, the whole of
the whole road
will be 50.
Next we have Ericsson Road, which again 100 to 50. In light, of course, of all the developments and housing that's going in there, and the same again, Kenny, 70 to 50. Perhaps another one we may have some further questions on, Marine Parade from Vortier Street to Coote Road from 50 to 30. Councillor Mawson?
Yeah, I feel the mitigation that's been put in at the moment along Marine Parade is actually adequate. And just leading out from there, going past here at the War Memorial, just feel like 30k to Coote Road's a little bit too slow, personally.
Okay, so we'll mark that for further debate.
Could I just ask a question about that? There is a strip of that road that has been changed with the parking arrangement that's been made. Is that going to be looked at again, or is that going to be permanently part of our city road system, please.
So through you, Worship, there are no plans at the moment to make any changes to that section.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. It only goes to Seaview along Marine Parade, so it doesn't go all the way to Coot. It only takes into account here.
Right.
Okay. So to Seaview, which that's... Yeah, just here. Yeah. Councillor Price.
Question from Ellison Street then to Vortia? That's the zone, isn't it? That's a 40k zone.
That's a courtesy zone at the moment, not a
so
speed
why
limit,
are-
and that's being removed, is that correct?
That's correct. The courtesy zone, which is from between Breakwater Road and Ellison Street, will be uplifted.
What speed will that be?
So that'll then be 50, basically from Ellison Street to Vortier, and then from here onwards to where we turn into State Highway at the port entrance.
So we're going to get rid of a 40k area and go to 50 down that end.
For a very small portion of it. But the 40 isn't a speed limit at the moment,
No.
it's purely a courtesy zone.
Yeah, and I just wonder whether it's an opportunity to actually make it legal that you have to travel at the speed limit we're going to make Marine Parade all the way along.
So extending the recommended zone that the 30 kilometres starts, to
Yeah.
start from Ellison Street.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a note of that and we can...
Roundabouts.
Can I
Is it
just
30 or
speak
40
to
K?
something? One of the issues that's been raised in the submissions was the fact that it's really hard for pedestrians to safely cross Marine Parade because of that lay-by we've put between Voltaire and the eyesight on the opposite side. Because traffic, you've got two-way traffic that people have to cross if they're pedestrians. So I feel that reducing the speed there to 30 would make that crossing easier or safer for people, because there's nowhere in the middle of that two-way traffic that they can stop and wait for traffic to pass. So that's an issue for me.
There are a number of raised pedestrian crossings along that length of road now. They're the ones that we've installed earlier this year.
Two-way traffic.
Yeah, but there are the raised pedestrian strips that have been installed.
Oh, okay, with an island.
Well, not an island. We're on the eastern side, because the road wouldn't be wide enough to accommodate an island, I wouldn't have thought. Councillor Tapani.
Just a question through our staff for follow-on from Councillor Bogue's cordial. Those changes which have taken place on the Marine Parade, and some of our longer-standing councillors might be able to answer this, but this is directed at our staff. Visually, and my understanding is the two-way lane has actually been narrowed as a result of those changes. Is that just a visual misrepresentation, or those changes and traffic mitigation measures we've made along the Marine Parade, it looks as if the two-way lane has been actually narrowed as a result of that. And so where I'm coming from is the patch of risk to cross that road is reduced as a result of those changes. So, or is it just visually not? Is it just my eyes?
So through you, Chair, no, that observation's correct.
Okay.
The lane widths are reduced, certainly in comparison to the sections either side of it.
Thank you.
And I think some of the confusion that had arisen when the roading configuration was initially changed is that those two lanes both used to be southbound lanes, and where the car park lane now is was the northern bound main lane, as opposed. So that, I think, is where initially there was some confusion with people trying to cross that road, because obviously if you're used to it being just having to look one way, and the change was made where it was a two-way roading configuration.
Thank you.
So Councillor Price, just going back to you and your proposition around extending that zone to commence from Ellison Street. And was that at a 40 or 30 kilometre?
That's a good question. But it's just that courtesy zone's been there for years, there's always been a complaint that you can't police it. And there's never been, I haven't heard any complaints about the fact that we were trying to keep down the speed along there. Logic would tell me that it's probably 40, but I'm not pro having a whole lot of speeds, all are different speeds. So I'd be guided by whatever others think.
Okay. Well, I've tagged that to discuss further, and perhaps if people just ponder on that while we carry on through the list, and then we can discuss that in further detail when we come to voting.
Thank you.
Next we have the bus lay-by on Gloucester Street, which is from 50 to 20.
Can I just give, so that's past EIT there?
It's actually the bus lay-by in front of EIT. It's just that short section that's like service lane.
Yep, okay.
And then lastly, well, no, not quite lastly, we've got a couple to add. Simmons Lane from 50 to 20. Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, I think 20 is just a little bit too slow. I'd be quite happy with 30, but yeah.
Is that the one that currently it has 10 kilometre signs on there? And it's
well, okay then. There you go.
We're doubling the speed limit.
Did no one ever.
Okay, now we also need to add on here is number 42, Napier Hill, where we are actually, the recommendation is for no change, so retaining the 50 kilometre per hour zoning across the whole of the hill there.
And it's 42.
And I would also like to add as 43 Friar Road. And was that 100 to 80? Was that the
That's correct, yeah.
Yes. And we did have a number of submitters who were seeking that to be reduced lower again.
Yes, and just to point out, it is in the statement of proposal, and it is in the wider paper. I just missed it off the list in the
Just
table.
got missed off the table.
It's my fault. Proposal for Friar?
Friar Road.
Through the Mayor, excuse me, how's that spelt so I can do a little...
F-R-Y-E-R.
Thank you.
So, for clarity, it's included on the plan that shows Variety Road, Quarry Ridge, etc.
So it's consistent with the recommendations around the reduction on those other roads in that area. The submissions, there were some submissions around the fact that there is a hohepa facility there, and so there had been some feedback that some felt that it would be more appropriate to reduce it further.
You couldn't go fast.
Yeah, good luck to anyone trying to do that speed.
Yeah.
That's where it gets ridiculous.
Okay, so we have got. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get us to vote and move on all the things that we've sort of in agreement with, and then we can work our way through those. I'm trying to manage this in as as efficient way as possible. Although it probably would be quite good now. What time are we? Oh, well, it's lunchtime. So
School bell's about to ring.
Yeah. I think now would be a wonderful time to stop, and obviously then we can come back and work through those ones that people still had some further discussion they would like to undertake, and then we'll chunk things down into a logical way to vote on them to be as efficient as possible. So thank you, everyone.
Oh.